The door to the office swung open before Nadia Croft even had a chance to knock. She stood in the hallway of Mercer Capital's 42nd floor, her resume clutched in both hands, her coat still damp from the rain outside. The receptionist had waved her through with a distracted flick of the wrist. "Third door on the left, just follow the carpet." And now here she was, staring at a man who hadn't looked up from his desk yet. Even though she was clearly standing in his doorway, she waited. 3 seconds, 5. The appointment was for 9, he said, still not looking up. His pen moved across a document in long, even strokes. "It's 9:04. Nadia glanced at her watch. The elevator bank on the lobby level was down. "I took the stairs." He looked up then, just briefly. Just enough to take her in. The damp coat, the careful posture, the folder pressed flat against her chest, before his eyes went back to the page. 42 floors, she added. Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't quite a smile, but it wasn't nothing either. His name was Edmund Hale. She had read everything about him on the train ride over. 44 years old, CEO of Mercer Capital, one of the largest private investment firms in Western Canada. His photo in the company directory was 3 years old and made him look more approachable than he actually was. He had built the firm from 11 employees to over 300. He was known for 2 things, precision and impatience. She had been warned about both. "Sit down, Miss Croft," he said. She sat. The interview lasted exactly 19 minutes. He asked questions she hadn't expected, not about her qualifications, which he'd clearly already read, but about her decisions. Why she'd left her last firm. Why she'd turned down the position in Toronto the year before. Why she was here specifically, instead of somewhere with a larger salary and a better view. She answered everything directly, no softening, no performing. When he asked about the gap year on her resume 2021 to 2022, she told him the truth. "My daughter had surgery. I stayed home with her." He wrote something down. She didn't know what. "How old is she now?" he asked. 6. He nodded once, moved on. He offered her the junior analyst position at the end of the meeting, told her the salary figure without blinking, and said she could start Monday if she wanted it. She said yes. She didn't tell him about the other thing. The thing she'd found in a manila envelope 3 weeks ago. The thing that had been sitting in a shoebox under her bed since her mother passed the previous winter. She hadn't told anyone yet. She wasn't sure she ever would. She had time. Nadia Croft had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Hamilton, Ontario, with her mother Diane and a revolving door of cheap furniture that her mother reupholstered and sold at the weekend market. Diane was a woman who made things work. She never complained about money, even when there was none. She made soup from the bones of rotisserie chickens, and she kept a jar of coins on the kitchen counter, and she called it the vacation fund, even though they never went anywhere. Nadia had inherited her mother's practicality. She had also inherited her silence. When Diane died, quietly in a hospital room in December, with Nadia holding her hand and her daughter Bea asleep in the chair in the corner, she left behind 3 things of note: a storage unit full of fabric, a savings account with $11,000 in it, and the envelope. The envelope was unsealed. Inside was a photograph, a letter, and a business card. The photograph showed a man Nadia didn't recognize, standing in front of what looked like a building in downtown Vancouver. He was younger in the photo, maybe late 30s, and he was smiling at whoever was taking the picture. On the back of the photograph, in her mother's handwriting, was a name and a date. R. Hale, October 2002. The letter was short, 4 paragraphs. Her mother had written it to herself or to no one or to Nadia specifically. It was impossible to tell. It explained that she had been in a relationship with a man named Richard Hale, briefly, in the early 2000s. That the relationship had ended badly. That she had never told him about Nadia. That she had made a decision she wasn't certain was right, and that she was sorry, and that she was leaving it up to Nadia to decide what to do with the information. The business card was old, the corners soft from age. It had a phone number that was almost certainly no longer active. It had a company name, Mercer Capital, and a title, Richard Hale, Senior Partner. Nadia had stared at it for a long time. Then she had put everything back in the envelope, put the envelope in the shoebox, and pushed it under the bed. She had not applied to Mercer Capital because of the envelope. She had applied because the role was a good fit and the firm had a strong track record, and her current contract was ending in 6 weeks. She had told herself this many times. She was mostly sure it was true. She started on a Monday. The office was exactly what she had expected, glass and gray, the kind of place that had ergonomic chairs and no natural light and excellent coffee. Her desk was on the analyst floor, 2 levels below Edmund Hale's office. She would have no reason to interact with him regularly. That was fine. That was probably better. Her colleague Petra showed her around on the first day with the brisk efficiency of someone who had done it many times before. Kitchen's there, server room's there, don't use the printer on the left, it jams on anything longer than 12 pages. Conference rooms need to be booked 24 hours in advance. Edmund's calendar is locked, don't even try. If you need something signed, send it to his EA Yolanda. Got it, Nadia said. Also, Petra added, lowering her voice slightly, there's a guy on the 3rd floor named Grant who will try to convince you to join his fantasy hockey league. Do not join the fantasy hockey league. Nadia almost smiled. Noted. She settled in quickly. She was good at the work, genuinely good, not just competent. She had a way of reading financial models that her colleagues found useful, catching the places where the assumptions didn't quite hold. By the end of the first week, she was being included in meetings she hadn't expected to be in for at least a month. Bia adjusted well, too. Nadia had found a daycare 2 blocks from the office and a neighbor named Mrs. Okafor who was willing to do afternoon pickup for a reasonable rate. The mornings were a managed chaos. Coats, lunches, mittens, the whole small ceremony, but they made it work. They always had. It was on a Thursday morning, 6 weeks in, that things changed. Nadia had stayed late the night before finishing a report and had come in early to print the final version before the 8:30 meeting. The printer on the right, the good printer, was out of paper. She refilled it. It jammed anyway. She stood in the kitchen fixing herself a coffee while she waited for the IT ticket to process, and she had the folder tucked under her arm, and when she turned around too quickly, she walked straight into someone coming through the doorway. The coffee went sideways. It hit the sleeve of a very dark, very expensive suit jacket. She stood there for a moment watching the coffee spread, and then she looked up. Edmund Hale looked down at his sleeve, then at her, then at the folder which had landed on the floor, its contents fanned out across the tile. I'm so sorry, she said. She was already crouching down, gathering the papers. I didn't see the door. It's fine, he said. His voice was even. He crouched down too, picked up a page that had slid toward the wall. They were both on the floor of the kitchen. It occurred to her that this was an absurd situation for a Friday morning. He handed her the page. She took it. Their hands were close, not touching, and she was about to stand up when she saw it. The photograph. It had been tucked inside the folder which she had brought in because she'd been working at home the night before, which had been a mistake she was now acutely aware of. The photograph had slid out and was lying face up on the kitchen tile. Her mother, young, maybe 20-67, laughing at something off camera, and beside her, one arm around her shoulders, the man from the other photograph, R. Hale. October 2002, Edmund was looking at it. He didn't move for a moment. His expression changed in a way she couldn't quite name. Not shock exactly, but something underneath shock. Something older than that. Where did you get this? He said. His voice was different, not unkind, just very, very quiet. Nadia sat back on her heels. The kitchen felt suddenly smaller. My mother left it to me, she said, when she passed. He picked it up carefully, the way you pick something up when you're not sure it's real. He looked at it for a long time. Diane, he said. It wasn't a question. Her throat closed. You knew her, she said. I knew her. He set the photograph down, very gently on the kitchen floor between them. This is my father. The building hummed around them. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang and went to voicemail. Nadia looked at the photograph, at the man with his arm around her mother's shoulders, at the name written on the back in her mother's handwriting, R. Hale. Richard Hale, she said slowly. Senior partner. He died in 2019. Edmund's eyes were still on the photograph. He never mentioned. He never said anything about. He stopped, pressed his lips together. What's your mother's name? Diane Croft. She died last December. He looked up then, really looked at her. It was different from the way he'd looked at her in the interview. Not assessing, not measured, just very still. How old are you? He asked. 31. She watched him do the arithmetic. She had done it herself many times, standing over the shoebox, turning the envelope over in her hands. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he stood up, straightened his jacket, the sleeve still wet with her coffee, and held out a hand to help her up. She took it. Can we talk? He said. Not here. Properly. Yes, she said. I think we need to. They met after work at a cafe 2 blocks from the office. Edmund was already there when she arrived, his jacket replaced, his expression carefully neutral in the way that she was starting to recognize as his default when he was working through something. She brought the shoebox. She hadn't planned to. But when she'd gone home at lunch to pick up Bia from a half-day, she'd stood in the bedroom and looked at the shoebox and thought, there's no point waiting anymore. She set it on the table between them. He looked at it. He didn't reach for it. My father had a difficult time in the early 2000s, he said. He and my mother separated in 2001. He came back. They stayed together until she died 2011. But that gap, 2001 to 2003, I never knew much about it. He didn't talk about it. My mother didn't either, Nadia said. I didn't even know his name until I found the envelope. Edmund was quiet for a moment. The letter says she never told him. No, why? Nadia looked down at her hands. The letter doesn't explain that. I think she was afraid. Or maybe she thought it was cleaner. She paused. Or maybe she thought it wasn't her decision to make alone and she ran out of time to figure out whose decision it was. He was quiet for a long time after that. Outside, the street was beginning to fill with the end-of-day crowd. Nadia watched a man in a high-vis vest locking up a food truck. Two teenagers arguing cheerfully in front of a bubble tea place, the ordinary machinery of a Thursday evening. I want to do a DNA test, Edmund said finally. If that's all right with you. I was going to ask the same thing, she said. He nodded. Something in his posture settled, just slightly, like a question had been asked and an answer given even though neither of them had said the main thing yet. I have a daughter, she said. She's 6. Her name is Bea. He looked at her. Her father? Not in the picture. She said it simply, without weight. It was just a fact, same as any other. It's just the two of us. He nodded again. He seemed to be the kind of person who processed things quietly, which she respected because she was the same. My father was a good man, he said. Whatever happened, whatever the circumstances were, I want you to know that. She felt something shift in her chest. My mother was too, a good woman. She stopped, she made things work. That was her great skill. Mine too, he said quiet. They sat with that for a moment. So, he said, the DNA test took 12 days. She didn't tell anyone at work. She didn't tell Petra or Mrs. Okafor or the friend she called every Sunday evening. She told Bea nothing, because Bea was 6 and there was nothing to tell yet, not really. She worked. She came in early and stayed late, and she was professional in every interaction with Edmund Hale, who was equally professional, and who stopped by her desk once on the 9th day with a question about the Clearwater file that was absolutely a real question about the Clearwater file and nothing else. She thought about her mother a lot during those 12 days, about the jar of coins on the kitchen counter, about the way Diane used to hum when she was working at her sewing machine, not any particular song, just a low, steady sound like the machine itself, about the things her mother had chosen to carry quietly and the things she'd chosen to put down. The results came on a Tuesday. Both of them had registered the same email service. There was no need to discuss it. They would each see the results at the same time. She was at her desk when the notification came. She looked at the result for a long moment. Then she put her phone face down on the desk and finished what she was working on. She was almost done, and it seemed right to finish it. Then she picked up her phone and sent Edmund a single message. Did you see it? His reply came 40 seconds later. Yes. Are you all right? She thought about it. I think so. You? Working on it. She almost smiled. She typed back. Me too. They met in the conference room on the 42nd floor at 5:15 after most of the staff had gone home. Edmund had asked Yolanda to leave early. The room was quiet and the Vancouver skyline sat flat and blue outside the window, and neither of them sat down. Half siblings, she said. That's what the test says. Yes, different mothers, yes. She looked out the window. I have a sister, she said. It came out very small, younger than me by a few years. Charlotte. She turned back to him. She doesn't know about any of this either. Do you want to tell her? I don't know yet. I think so, eventually. She paused. What about you? Is there anyone else? No, my mother is gone. No other siblings I know of. He paused on those last 4 words in a way she understood. I have 2 cousins in Victoria, a decent relationship with them. And what do you? She stopped, started again. What do you want to do with this? He looked at her directly, the way he had the morning in the kitchen, when everything was different and everything was the same. I want to know you, if you're willing. Not because of any obligation or, he stopped, because you're my sister. That's a real thing. I don't want to pretend it isn't. Nadia thought about the jar of coins and the sewing machine and the shoebox under the bed. I have a daughter who calls her grandmother's memory Grandma Diane who makes soup, she said. She should have more family than that. She deserves more. Something crossed Edmund's face that she hadn't seen there before. Something warm. Does she like hockey? He asked. She's 6. She's willing to like anything if you give her a snack first. He laughed then. A real one, brief and genuine. It changed his face entirely. I know a rink, he said. It was Edmund who found the missing piece 6 weeks later. He had been quietly going through his father's files, the old ones, paper, stored in the basement of the family home in West Vancouver that he'd been meaning to sell for 2 years and couldn't bring himself to. He called her on a Saturday morning, apologetic about the hour. I found something, he said. Can you come over? She brought Bia because it was Saturday and Mrs. Okafor had her nephew visiting. Bia sat on the floor of Richard Hale's old study with a granola bar and a very serious expression while Edmund spread papers across the desk and showed Nadia what he'd found. Her father, their father, had known. Not about the pregnancy, which had happened after the relationship ended, but he had tried to find Diane after. He had written 3 letters to an address she'd given him, and all 3 had been returned unopened. He had tried to call and the number had been disconnected. The records showed it clearly, the returned envelopes, still bundled together with an elastic band in the back of a filing drawer, and a note in Richard's handwriting. D. Couldn't reach. Tried through March. There was more. A piece of paper from later, 2007, with Diane Croft's name on it and an address in Hamilton and a question mark, and nothing after that. As if he had found the address and then stopped, and the note didn't say why. Nadia picked up the bundle of returned letters and held them very carefully. He looked for her, she said. He looked for her, and she moved. She moved to Hamilton in 2005, and she never forwarded her mail, and she stopped. He got close. He came close. Yes, she thought about her mother, about the jar of coins, about whether Diane had known and turned away, or simply never known how close it had been, whether she had been afraid or careful or something in between that didn't have a clean name. She wasn't trying to hide, Nadia said finally. She just didn't know he was looking. I think that's right, Edmund said. Bia looked up from the floor. Who was looking, she asked, with the matter-of-fact curiosity of a 6-year-old who has been listening carefully to something she wasn't explicitly included in. Nadia crouched down beside her. Someone who wanted to find someone, she said. And they almost did. Did they find them? Nadia looked at Edmund across the room. At the desk that had been his father's. At the returned letters in her hand. Sort of, she said, a little bit late, but they found them. Bea seemed to find this satisfactory. She went back to her granola bar. The following month was not simple, but it was good. Nadia told her sister Charlotte, cautiously over a long phone call one evening after Bea was in bed, with a glass of wine on the counter she did touch because she needed to stay clear. Charlotte cried. Then she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Can I call you back tomorrow?" And she did, and they talked for 2 hours, and by the end Charlotte had booked a flight from Kelowna for the following weekend. It was a lot of people for Bea, the weekend Charlotte came. Edmund came too, with takeout from a place on Commercial Drive that turned out to be excellent, and they sat around Nadia's small kitchen table, and it was crowded and too loud, and Bea demanded that everyone explain their jobs in 30 seconds or less, which led to Charlotte giving a performance description of her work as a dental hygienist that earned a standing ovation from no one except Bea, who was very committed to the bit. Nadia looked around the table at one point and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness exactly, or not only happiness, something more like rightness. Like something had come back into alignment, quietly, without announcement. Later, after Edmund and Charlotte had left and Bea was asleep, Nadia stood in the kitchen washing up and thought about her mother. About what Diane would have made of all this. About whether she would have been relieved or ashamed or something more complicated than either. She thought Diane would have been relieved. She thought Diane had carried it for a long time. The weight of a decision she'd made in a difficult year, and that maybe the envelope had been her way of saying, "It's yours now. You decide what to do with it," and she had. She'd opened it. She'd walked into the office on the 42nd floor. She'd spilled the coffee and dropped the folder, and the photograph had slid out across the kitchen tile at exactly the right moment, which was also the worst possible moment, which were sometimes the same moment. She turned off the kitchen light. She had a meeting in the morning. She had a daughter asleep in the next room who would need breakfast and mittens and a specific pair of socks that were somehow never where anyone left them. She had a brother who texted her on Thursday evenings to ask if she wanted to grab lunch that week. She had a sister who called on Sundays now, which meant she had 2 Sunday phone calls, which was more than she'd had in a long time. She stood in the dark kitchen for a moment, listening to the building settle around her. Then she went to bed.